Welcome back to the show. We got a great one lined up. Will the US dollar collapse? Serious question. And the signal, does it equal XRP 10, 18, or $27? We got that and so much more. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show. You can follow us on X, YouTube, and DigPerspectives.com for exclusive content. Right now, $4.38 trillion market cap for crypto. The market's up 0.6, and we're sitting at that all-time high range for the cryptocurrency market. Bitcoin 124,500 plus, Ethereum 4,700 plus, and look at this. BNB takes the number 3 spot from XRP. It's up 30% on the 7-day. XRP hits the number 4 spot at 297. We're off 1% on the 24 and up 4.6 on the 7-day. Range of price between 296 and 304. We'll have our day. There's no question about it. Let's start right here. It's Caleb and Brown. Listen, institutional grade custody for free. It costs you nothing. Okay. And they have multiple layers of security. They always verify your transactions, no hidden fees or spreads, one flat fee for trading. And if you build a relationship and have large withdrawals, you can negotiate that. How about that one? Click the link underneath the video or simply go to xrpwealth589.com and find out for yourself what everyone else is learning. It's a great place to have your assets. No doubt about it. Now, here we know the White House is very excited and bullish and wants crypto bill done by the end of year 2025. Now, with that being said, Brian Armstrong feeling bullish on U.S. crypto regulation. Clear rules are on the way. I love hearing it. Let's hear him say it exactly that way.
One more piece of legislation that, as you said, got bipartisan support in the House already and now is being debated in the Senate. And this is what we call market structure legislation, which just simply means it's covering all of the non-stablecoin crypto assets, things like Bitcoin and Ethereum. And it's resolving some of these outstanding issues from the last administration that got weaponized by people like Gary Gensler trying to go after the crypto industry because it wasn't clear, were these a commodity, were they a security? So this legislation is making great progress. I've never been more bullish on the chances to get it passed into law. This freight train has left the station, and there's people on both sides of the aisle in the Senate that are eager to get this legislation put on the books. Now, this hasn't stopped the big bank lobby from coming in trying to throw a wrench into things. They actually want to go in and ban rewards on stablecoins, and that was already settled in the prior Genius Act that I just mentioned. But I'm not too worried about it. The senators we spoke to aren't really going to entertain reopening that issue, and so hopefully this legislation gets passed into law very soon.
There we have it. I want it to happen too. Listen, I think we're going to get it. I mean, that and 50 cents won't get you a cup of coffee, but the truth of the matter is I think that the US Congress and Senate, they understand they need this for the US dollar dominance, and their kids have to spend dollars at school too. So that's where we're at. And understanding the US dollar's lost nearly 50% of its purchasing power measured in gold over the past 12 months. This is the reserve currency of the world, ladies and gentlemen. It's in massive trouble, okay? And that market infrastructure bill going along with the Genius Act can begin to stop the bleeding. But remember, one isn't good without the other. So Genius Act can be passed and signed into law, but it means nothing without that market infrastructure bill. So we will see. Just like we also understand, central banks are connected by the hip, globally speaking. This bond rate in Japan gets any higher, and we could see an unwind in Japan from investors that become systemic for the entire banking system. Yes, that means the Federal Reserve too. Japan and the United States are connected very closely in the bond market, obviously. And when the market rate goes up for bonds, it puts pressure on the investors that borrowed those bonds for nothing. So as it starts to crush their small margin because they borrow in Japan for nothing and then go invest in some other FX market somewhere for a small gain. And when that gain goes away because the rates are going up in Japan, then it causes a what they call reverse carry trade, and people start unwinding their positions, which can become a systemic event that just cascades not only in Japan but to Federal Reserve and all the other central banks around the world too, because everyone starts fleeing their position. So we will see what happens here, but there is a liquidity crisis loading from Japan to the world. XRP is a solution. Yen carry trade is about to collapse. Be ready. We're very close. I think we are. And this is very dangerous. And this is why you've heard me talk for the last couple of years about the Plaza Accords, because the Plaza Accords involve 5 countries: the US, Germany, France, Japan, and one other one that escapes me at the moment. But the point is that they devalued the dollar back in 1984, 85 at the Plaza Accords. And I'm saying that this could be a moment that we have show up again, because here it is rearing its head, and they devalue the dollar in what I call the Mar-a-Lago Accords because of President Trump. This is in term, right? So we'll see how this goes. However, this reminds me of what I played yesterday. And yes, I'm going to play it again, because the news is the news, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm not about to come up with something you don't need to hear when you need to hear this.
And the last key attribute of a healthy liquid market is really resilience. And that is getting at the ability for a market to recover from a significant systemic event. So if there was some sort of a market shock, the ability for order books to get back to normality and tighten back to similar prices to where they were prior to that event relatively quickly. And so all of those attributes are very important to a healthy liquid market.
How does deeper liquidity impact services like on-demand liquidity or ODL?
That's a great question. So as you think about the value that we're providing sending flow from the US to Mexico, because we're able to use XRP as the bridge currency between the US and Mexico and do basically instantaneous transactions, we are significantly reducing the cost base sending that money cross-border.
And there you have it. So the truth of the matter is what Brianna Madigan is explaining to you is that this has been the plan, is to be ready for some kind of systemic event. And when we look at systemic events, this is the one rearing its head. Well, what do we have a deep relationship with in in Japan? SBI, Yoshitaka Katal, seed investor in R3 and Ripple. So everyone knows that this has been something on the horizon. And at the same time, the current acting head of the CFTC discussing the real concerns about digital assets, crypto versus sovereign money. So should we see that systemic event? This is from 2023. She was saying this. That's how smart and how versed she is in this space and the challenges it can have towards sovereign money. And this is the concern of a real regulator who is currently the interim head of the CFTC. Take a listen to this.
I think when you look at traditional schools of thought around geopolitical power, you have, of course, military power, and you have economic power, and you have the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. So I think people are very concerned that should, because of these innovations in digital assets, in particular, if there really is a movement towards certain stable coins, for example, payment stable coins that are not clearly they're not digital fiat, because that would be a CBDC. And they're also not tokenized commercial bank money. And so if there's ambiguity over that regulation and over what those stable coins might be, people are really worried that that's going to be a movement away from the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. And that is a national security issue for the United States, as well as a deeply monetary policy issue as well. So this is really, I think, things that people are thinking about, and it's things that people are concerned about. And I think there are also concerns about what does it mean, again, from a geopolitical perspective, if should another currency arise as the world's reserve currency, or if there's a non-state currency, so to speak, that becomes a world's reserve. That's another thing that I think people are very concerned about.
There you have it. Now, that's a real regulator running the CFTC right now, telling you about the concerns of non-government backed currencies dominating world reserve currency like the US dollar. Well, isn't that the question you would be asking if you understood that XRP was designed for systemic risk events and the fact that we're teetering on the edge of one, liquidity crisis loading? I mean, these are the questions that we're asking. In the interim, we're watching India, who has been like a tennis match against crypto. We will, we won't. We will, we won't, right? India will launch its own crypto backed by its central bank. So now they're getting into the game, right? Using their dollar, right? So there you have it. So now you have this. Europe, going along, has agreed on the first rules of the digital euro. What do we know from Cassie Craddock? Listen to this.
The financial institution, this level of certainty to be able to lean into the blockchain and digital asset space. And so we've seen some really great innovative use cases on the back of that. So, we partnered with SocGen Forge, one of the leading banks here in France, firstly around custody, but now more broadly on issuing their Euro CV stablecoin on XRP Ledger.
Oh, it doesn't stop there. Stay with me. And then we have the president of the European Central Bank. She's announcing they're going to do a digital euro launch, and it'll be a pilot for two years starting this month.
Good question. We want to make sure that when it is launched, it's a success. So we have to really make sure that there is no hiccup, no problem in the handling of this digital currency, number one. Number two, we need the support of the European Parliament, which has to vote a piece of legislation to actually establish the digital euro. We should be technically ready ourselves in October this year. Wow. Yeah, and we would be ready to launch for a 2 years pilot to make sure that everything works fine. And then we can launch across the euro area.
There you have it right there. Pilot begins this month. So everyone's taking their place and preparing to move into the new digital on-chain economy by having their own sovereign money represented on those new digital payment rails. So now let's listen to a recap. This is Chris Larson here. Now I've got to mute this and see if I can pull this off. I've got the version of this that you need to hear. Now, this might not sync up with the lips because I've got to do a separate audio track to get the music out of it because it's copyright. So, but you need to hear this. So take a listen.
In movement is we just realized there's a fundamental problem in the world that needs to be solved. And that is you really can't have globalization that's workable unless you have interoperability in three things: data, goods, and money. And we only have those in two things: data and goods. Without the money part, globalization doesn't work. It's incomplete. So what's really exciting is we think what blockchain really represents, the finishing of an internet of value, is the completion of globalization. And now suddenly I think we have a much better chance of that working for another 2 billion people. We just thought there was just a matter of time before the world was going to have some form of a digital currency that had no government behind it or no counterparty. But I think that kind of evolved into this excitement around, hey, that it's not just about the currency, but fundamentally it's about wiring an internet for money. This is almost like 1994, the first days of the data internet. But I think what that means for the world is it's the commoditization of reach. Suddenly, every single entrepreneur, every bank, every currency in the world has unlimited reach. And right now, that's not the way it is. And that's just exactly what happened to data now is happening for money. And that's really fun and exciting. And I think we'll have kind of the stakes are even larger when it comes to money and value. This is going to be a profound change on the way the world works. And I think brings the world closer together. I mean, through all this backlash and globalization, we all know that we have no hope unless we are kind of working together. And I think this is really going to clear a lot of the friction that's kind of getting in the way of the promise that globalization was supposed to bring. Why?
And there you have it right there. That tells me the vision is still the same. The vision is actually more real today than it was when he said those things, but they're executing it beautifully. And we're all in. And now we see that globalization turns out to be what? Money. That next phase is money. What is it? ECB? The euro? Right? The euro CV? India's jumping in. All the other countries are launching stable coins or CBDCs. That is the next wave, because that is where the vehicles will come from to begin to move the liquidity around these new payment rails. That's cars on the highway, baby. That's what we need, right? So here we have it. And then we know BRICS coalition, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and many, many other nations now, they don't want the US dollar either. The West certainly doesn't want the Chinese yuan. So the only neutral settlement layer left to choose from would be XRP, and it's without compromise. Europe wants an independent financial system too as well, not relying on SWIFT or USD. This is a factor most miss or misunderstand. He's absolutely right. Shout out to Anders. And the independent financial system can only be XRP. I agree. I think Russia will never trust American company again after they were kicked out of SWIFT. I agree with that. The Russian central bank has already tested XRP. Again, I have said since the day one on my channel, the only way to get the world to consider something money is to give them some, because it ain't money unless everybody says it is. And the only way to get them to say it is to give them some. Don't believe it is still true, which is why I believe we're getting that National Trust Bank charter, and we could find out as early as this month for that and the Federal Reserve Master Account, or November at the latest. We should know what the answer is on that. And then that takes us to the scenario, the success scenario. David Schwartz is currently no one controls. It's a currency no one controls, and basically saying that, yes, two world reserve currencies can exist at the same time. I've played it a million times here on the channel. I have to do it today. That's what we're looking at. And XRP could certainly play a role in that. All eyes on Q4 25 and Q1 26. It will be huge for XRP. It's all coming together for an XRP supply shock. Be patient and enjoy the process. We're very close. I agree with this just simply on the fact that we got ETFs we're waiting on too, and that should be this month. We should hear something on that. Unless the government still shut down, then we probably won't hear anything till they open the doors again. But nonetheless, this is where we're sitting. There's so much good in front of us, and I don't see it stopping. I just see a moment that they've picked that they're going to do it, and we won't know until they decide to. Well, here's a reminder from Egg Reg Crypto about the 2-week time frame he put out back in June of this year. And he said the 2-week time frame, the signal targeting $10, $18, and $27. You pick. Ladies and gentlemen, you pick. There you have it. This is where we're at. I'm down for it. I'm excited. I want to see where it'll go. I have no idea. I mean, I know what I believe ultimately, 4 and 5 digit XRP to serve the world if the mission's complete. And I do believe that they will complete the mission, but it's not financial advice from me or anyone else. It's just my digital perspectives. I'll catch all of you on the next one.